About how you came to make this film. Where was the inspiration, and what was the process like in terms of working with that group of actors?
Well, I made a film about 10 years ago called Shakespeare Behind Bars, and that was about Shakespeare being done in a prison with a group of inmates. And we followed them for about a year, and they did a production of The Tempest. And building off of that film, I started to think of where else could Shakespeare be done in a unique location. And had to, different ideas, and started to take the one that I made it with my wife, Jillian Spitzmiller. The idea of Shakespeare being done with the senior population. And as we thought about it, we just sort of decided that it would be best in doing it with a population that had experience in theater. And we looked in, there's a home in Los Angeles that works with retired Hollywood entertainers. And then there's the home in Inglewood that works with, both coasts work with people who worked in film and theater, but obviously the one in Hollywood has retirees and residents that are more Hollywood-based, and the one in Inglewood has residents that are more Broadway-based. Turns out the home in Inglewood, the Lillian Booth Actors Home, already had a Shakespeare group. And so we approached the staff, and in talks with the staff, they loved the idea. The staff was really excited about the idea. And I just gotta say, it's so strange to be talking to myself in the back of your heads. I just want to put that out there so I can get it out of my head.
We could have everybody turn around.
It's fine. It's fine. The home was really enthusiastic about it, and as we had discussions with the administrators there and the staff, we went back and forth, and it became apparent that they wanted to do something a little bit bigger than what they'd done and what they were doing with their group. And so we proposed doing a full-length production. We proposed bringing in outside directors. And we made about 4 visits to the home itself to speak with residents and to try and determine the interest in the home, as well as what sort of work they would want to do. We went in kind of with the idea that we would do Romeo and Juliet. Senior population doing young love, and they didn't want to do that. They wanted to do something that was more an ensemble piece, and they wanted to do a comedy. They didn't want to do a tragedy. And so they kept coming back to MIDSUMMER NIGHT'S DREAM. And we settled on that. And there was a large interest within the home for doing this amongst the residents. As you can see on that first day, there's a lot of people in the room. There was a bit of a fall off that first week when they realized what was going to be done. But the people who stayed with it, the dozen to 14 or 15 people that stayed with it, were there every day, 5 days a week, in the rehearsal room as well as working on it outside.
Well, the actors and actresses and musicians were really remarkable. I mean, Joan Stein was an extraordinary pianist. Charlotte was a beautiful singer. Demos, a powerful guy, but also a truly wonderful actor. And to hear him working through his life issues around success and his occupation, and to see him and hear him talk about at the end of the film now now I can say how much I enjoy life after going through that experience was really, it took us on a remarkable journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were very lucky.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thing to say. It's an interesting observation. It's, I've been making documentary films since I graduated from Dartmouth, and I made them at Dartmouth as well. That's where I sort of started in the genre. And, I talked about how we had several calls with the home. We made 4 visits to the home to engage in, to sort of see what the interest was. You have to do your research when you embark on a film. And we really felt that the characters were there at the home, from their life experience, from how they talked about their passion for the art and for theater. So we knew that Demos would be a character. We knew that Charlotte would be a great character. Joan is such a lovely, lovely person. We sort of had those characters established. Harold was another person that we were interested in following. But we didn't know about Mary. Mary was not someone we knew, and
she's a pistol.
I am so grateful for Mary to this day for coming into our lives, first of all, and then coming into our film, second of all, because she came in the film at such a point where the film needed it. The story needed her. And not only that, of course, the production needed her. She provides a wonderful breath of fresh air and a great heavy dose of humor.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's you really have to do your research and make sure that the characters are there and that they're committed. Because there's nothing worse than embarking on a telling of a story and then finding out people aren't that interested or their stories aren't that interesting.
Right. Questions from the audience? The folks here all just saw the film, and questions from folks for Hank.
Hank, one thing that I was wondering about was Shakespeare Behind Bars. Did in any way did that inform or influence the way you went into and shot this film?
Yeah, that's a great question. Certainly, yeah, having had that experience of working with a population, and they're diving into one of Shakespeare's plays, that gave us a lot of background and info to work with. Also, working in this, we had a structure. We knew that we were gonna have a play, rehearsal, casting rehearsal, and then production. I think that there are some interesting similarities between the two films in that people drop out. In Shakespeare Behind Bars, it's because of disciplinary reasons. They violate some prison rules. In this film, it's for health reasons. There are other kind of similarities between the directors in the two films that come in from the outside. But the film, I feel like I had a lot more sense of where Shakespeare Behind Bars was going. And I knew what the story was going into that. This one, I thought I had an idea of where the story was going to go, but I was completely disoriented in the entire process, in the rehearsal room, dealing with this population, interacting with this population, which I don't have experience with, interacting with people with dementia and Alzheimer's, which I also don't have experience with. I think that I thought this film would be more about love, because of the lovers in *MIDSUMMER NIGHT'S DREAM. The film became far more about the magic, reality versus dreaming. people's perceptions, which was something that Joanne and I experienced firsthand every day going into the home, as well as all the, the being with Joan and hearing her stories about being on the show of shows and working with Sid Caesar and Zero Mostel, and she had more stories than you can imagine. That experience of working with this population, I think, in both films, to just come back to your question, in all of our films, we try to keep track of our own journey and respect the journey that we had and respect the journey of our subjects. So the journey we had with this film was one of disorientation a lot of the time, as well as wonderful moments of creativity with these people.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Hank, how tough was it to take the footage that you did, which I understand is considerable, and indeed formulating it to what we just watched? I understand it took you several years to do it, and I also had the feeling from the way you explained it to me previously that it was not an easy process.
Yeah, we had roughly 200 hours of footage that we had to figure out how to form into a story. We followed a lot of characters. We followed probably a total of 10 characters, and and we edited all those characters. We the way that Jillian and I like to work is we do character-driven films. So when it comes to post, I'll take 4 characters and she'll take 4 characters, for instance, and we will edit those stories from beginning to end. And we'll look at those stories in their entirety and see how interesting they are, how compelling they are, and also how they talk, how the different characters and the different storylines talk to each other. What does this character represent versus this character? What theme does this character support versus that character? So, we had to look at all the footage, we had to log all the footage, we had to transcribe all the footage, and then we had to edit these stories for their main points, their highlights, and put that into a cut, which I think was about 4 hours long. And then we usually swap the characters. The characters that Jillian has done, I will take a stab at, and so on and so forth, until we get it down to 4 or 5 characters that we want to follow. And then we do test screenings, show it to audiences and see what they're reacting to and what's compelling to them.
Was there a lot of changes made once it was shown to an audience?
Were there a lot of changes?
Made after you initially showed what you had put together in the first one?
I think one of the most, the largest change we made was concerning the 2 directors, Ben and Noah. They played a larger role in some of the earlier cuts. And audiences and myself and Jillian as well felt that the story was being told about the elders. It was their story, and their journey of creativity. And it's one of the main messages of the film, which is creative aging. The young gentlemen are obviously definitely a certain part of that, but I think people, the less of them was enough.
I have another question here.
Yeah, I
Sure.
just have a quick question about the actress or resident that you ended up, she played Hermia. Did you or anyone shooting or the director's casting know about her own personal story with her parents' selection of her first husband before she went in to play that role? Because that was a really powerful sort of undercurrent story, and then of course the fact that she got very nervous. Well, first of all, that she had never performed before, and
Right.
then got very nervous, and then on performance day, she was amazing.
Yeah, no, none of us knew about that. And it's interesting because she was a minor character. We weren't thinking that we would follow her. We were thinking that we would follow Lysander, who was being played by John Gray, which we did. We kept following him, but we showed up that day in the gazebo because we were interested in following John. And in their discussion in the gazebo, she reveals her connection to Hermia and the parallel storyline. And it's just one of those moments where you're like, oh, aha,
I know.
okay.
It really was.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing, pretty magical. And, even just down to the very last rehearsal where Demo blows up, she's still confused about who everyone is in the room. And hold on, I just lost you guys.
Uh-oh. We're still here.
Where'd you go? There you are. Okay.
We're here. We can hear you.
I had an autosave thing going on with another program. There's just a lot of amazing parallels between her story and Hermia's story and her finding her own voice. So, and it's really gratifying to hear you understand that and get that, because I think it's not, it's something that's not told in a heavy-handed way in the story. So it's great to hear an audience member connect with that.
Hank, in addition to working on films at Dartmouth, did you have a theater background? Were you in plays at the Hop? Were you in the Dartmouth Players? Did you do any of that? Have you had a lot of theater background?
At Dartmouth, no. At Dartmouth, I concentrated on film, and I was an English major. Film was not a major when I was there. It's since become a major. But I sort of fell into a screening class my freshman year and was hooked. It was a French New Wave class. And I thought, well, this is great. You get to watch movies.
I understand. I went through.
And then you get to make movies.
Yeah, right.
And so I spent a lot of time in the film department while I was there. I didn't do theater. It's after I left Dartmouth and I actually came to Santa Fe shortly after Dartmouth, and then moved to Los Angeles, and I did a lot of theater in Los Angeles and film and TV as well.
Great. Other questions from folks? What? Yeah.
So these people that you were, the actors are very vulnerable population, and I'm wondering to what degree you had family members or staff people that were expressing concerns or interacting. They are really in the periphery of the story, and I'm wondering if that was just, they were edited out, or they really did stay kind of on the outskirts here.
Can you repeat the last part of that, the last sentence?
If to what degree they might have been interacting or really prominent in some of the footage, but edited out.
That's a great question, because it in telling these resident stories, obviously we wanted to see if they had family around, and we did interview. We interviewed Demos' brother. We interviewed some of Charlotte's family members. I'm trying to think of who else. I think that was it. I think that as far as family goes, that was it. When it came, and they were in one of the final edits, when it came to streamlining the story and editing some of the stuff out, that was one of the things we took out, just because it was a story about the residents, and it was a story about the staff. We wanted to get Jalili's story in there somewhat, who's the recreation director. We wanted to fit Jordan in there. the families were all very supportive of the project. I think they have come to screenings. When we had a world premiere about a year ago in New York City, and some of the family members showed up and got up and they spoke and they said, "Thank you for this. It is something that we can remember our mother by." The woman who plays Hermia, her son was there, and she's gone into dementia. Lynette has, and she wasn't able to attend the premiere because she would be too disoriented by leaving the home, and he got up and said, I can't tell you how much this means to me and my family, because we have this wonderful moment in time to remember our mother by. So it was one of those things that we took out of the film because at that point we were sort of racing to get it to the end and the story over. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, thank you.
Okay.
There are two things I want to compliment you for, in addition to the other nice things I've said. The first is, I thought that you built an extraordinary dramatic arc to the film that came to the point of the blow-up with that incredible scene with Noah and Demos. I mean, just an extraordinary moment of filmmaking that then your wonderful editing allowed us to process. Because throughout the film, the editing, especially the cuts from moving scenes to nature, really allowed us to process what we had just seen, and that was especially true then. And then to take the film to its conclusion with the performance was extraordinarily sweet from there, because it was a frightening moment. I mean, a genuinely, frightening moment. I've done a lot of theater, and having been in those moments when everybody loses it just before the show, and you think the whole thing's going to hell, and how will it ever come back, and to actually go through that and experience that so dramatically there, and in such a theatrical way. You've got these two, the director and the big guy with the ego telling his actor what, all that classic stuff. And then to take it to the end was just really great filmmaking from where I sit, and the editing was beautiful throughout.
Well, thank you very much. That you described that moment perfectly. It was, and not only was it, I was afraid that the play wouldn't go on. I was afraid that the movie was over.
We got that. We got all that in a very, very clear but subliminal way.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the room, obviously, and I was up over in the corner trying to stay out of the camera's view against the wall, and it was happening, and I actually stepped away from the wall and tried to get Noah's attention, by waving. To go like this, let's cut it out. Well, for the well-being of everyone in the room and the safety of everyone in the room. But I mean, I'll admit it, just to be honest, for the well-being of the movie, or was there actually going to be a performance? Not that I can think that quickly, but I knew what was happening was really, really bad. And he never saw me. He never saw me wave my arms. And I got back against the wall, and it occurred to me that the cynical storyteller in me was like, oh, well, that's really good stuff.
A primal moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any other questions?
It appeared that Charlotte didn't sing, and it upset her in the final performance. I am so glad that you captured her singing so that we all could feel her pain too, that we could be as heartbroken as she apparently was.
Yeah, I mean, thank God we were there that day and caught her with the mermaid, singing and responding to Demo the way she did. Thank God we were there when she sang "You'll Never Walk Alone." And then we debated on that moment in the end when we come to that same speech, that same scene with the mermaid, and it's entirely different. But it's the truth, it's the reality of it. In Hollywood, it would have been, she did the same thing all over, and it would have been, this magical moment with 300-piece orchestra behind it, whatever. That's not the reality of what happened. The reality of what her situation in life is. So, yeah, it's a powerful moment, and I'm happy that it's in the film. All of it, her singing as well as her not singing.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit about the floating petals and the creating those words in the water?
Yeah, so the nature stuff or just specifically the water, or
the nature stuff in general too.
Nature stuff in general. Well, I mean, Midsummer Night's Dream takes place in the woods, and we wanted to play with the themes of the play, the ideas of the play, the plot of the play, and the home itself, obviously is a very controlled environment inside, but we felt that when we went into that rehearsal room, that represented the wood, where chaos happens, there's fairies running things amok and that sort of thing. But also the exterior of the home and the surrounding nature and landscape, we wanted to bring that out as well. And Demo was someone who always went out and traveled around the local neighborhood. Everyone went for walks. So everyone went out into the nature. And we felt that was, as someone mentioned earlier about transitions, that's such an important part of films, and especially documentaries. You got to give your audience a chance to breathe. And so we saw it as an opportunity to bridge both the world of the play and the world of the home, the world of the characters, with the world of creativity, if you will, all those things coming together. And finally, I have to thank Demo, because a few years ago they were redoing the sidewalk outside of the home, and as it was drying, he snuck out and wrote Shakespeare in the sidewalk. And so the sidewalk that leads up to the home, it's in the concrete itself, it says Shakespeare. And I was walking up to the home one day, and I saw that, and I thought, well, that's really interesting. What if we put ideas, words from the play into nature? So we did a whole host of words. We did risk, we did, what are some of the other ones? It's been so long, but the ones that are in there are love and dream. We also did SEE, risk. We experimented with it all, and we didn't want to overdo it. We had a lot more words in there, like I said, when we were editing some of the things that came out. But that was sort of the evolution of that concept and of that idea, was putting words, because Shakespeare is about text and of course the power of the word, and wanted to put that into the nature itself.
One last question, maybe?
Sure.
Anybody in the room? Because I have one one last question, which is, what are you working on now, if anything?
Does it have
Right.
anything to do with Shakespeare?
Anything to do with Shakespeare? Well, no, the job now actually is to get this film out there.
Do you have do you have distribution?
We have distribution for VOD, video on demand. The film will be released to Amazon and Netflix next April. We have, so this distributor that's doing that will also work on DVD release, theatrical release, television release, and we're also working on that on our own. It's a crowded marketplace now, and it's hard to be heard amidst Star Wars. You know what I mean? So it's a interesting world for us as filmmakers because it's a whole new paradigm, but it gives us a lot of opportunities to self-distribute and to go out to conferences and to get the world, get to the world and the different niches that the film involves. So it is kind of this whole new way of getting films out there, and we're doing our best to get it out to people like yourselves. Thank you so much for coming out and seeing this small itty-bitty little film. It means a lot if you could go spread the word, if you tell your friends, share it on email, share it on social media. We have a Still Dreaming Movie is our website. Go there and make a comment. Tell people about it.
Great, we will, and thank you very much for your great work, and keep going.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you
Hank.
very much.
Bye-bye, Hank.
Bye.
How's the weather?
Pretty warm.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, it was in the low 50s today, right through Thanksgiving, low 50s.